My name is Celine Ward, and until 2 years ago, I lived the kind of life people scroll past on social media. Quiet, ordinary, nothing special to remember, nothing dramatic enough to retell. I was 26, working as a data analyst in a mid-sized cybersecurity firm in Northport City, living alone in a tiny apartment that smelled like coffee and late-night exhaustion. My life was stable, predictable, boring even. And if someone had told me then that I would one day orchestrate the most intricate revenge my company had ever seen, I would have laughed. Back then. Revenge wasn't in my vocabulary. Fear was, silence was, endurance was, but everything changes when someone decides your life is disposable. It started on a rainy Thursday. I remember because the water had completely soaked the files in my bag, and I was annoyed at myself for forgetting the umbrella again. I was running late to the internal audit meeting, a meeting I had no idea would mark the beginning of my downfall. Inside the glass-walled conference room, everyone was already seated, except one, Elias Crane. The golden boy, senior supervisor, charming, brilliant, and the man who would turn my life into ashes. I sat down quietly, opened my laptop, adjusted my glasses like I always did when I felt nervous. Across the table, Elias finally walked in, confident, crisp charcoal suit, a smirk that looked like he was born with it. He glanced at me for a second longer than necessary. I didn't know then that this pause was intentional. I didn't know then that he had already chosen me. I didn't know then that I was the easiest pawn in his game. The meeting began, and halfway through, something strange happened. Numbers on the financial discrepancy sheet were wrong, very wrong. They pointed toward unauthorized access, missing funds, and my credentials. My hands went cold. The director's eyes landed on me. Everyone else followed. "Celine," he said slowly, "can you explain this?" "Explain what?" I stared at the screen again. My ID, my access logs, my timestamps, all fake. A perfect digital frame up. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My brain felt like someone had unplugged it. Only Elias looked relaxed. Too relaxed. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded, like he was watching a show he'd already seen the ending of. That was the first moment I knew something was wrong. The second moment came 30 minutes later, when I was escorted out of the room like a criminal. Suspended, under investigation, laptop confiscated, ID access revoked. My career, my reputation, gone in a single morning. I went home in a numb haze. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't understand any of it. My mind was looping only one question. Why me? The answer came 3 days later. A private message from a burner email. No name, no signature, just 3 words: "You were useful." That's when the fear turned into something else. Something sharper, something darker, something that would later become my greatest weapon. I began tracing everything I could, every login, every system breach, every financial mismatch, every person who had access. Every timestamp, every line of code, and every clue pointed in one direction. Elias Crane. He had used my credentials. He had planted the evidence. He had stolen the funds. And he had erased his tracks so well that only someone who truly understood the architecture of our system could ever find them. But he made one mistake. He underestimated how invisible I had been. People don't suspect ghosts. They don't watch the quiet ones. They don't notice the shadows. I found fragments, Steiny left, behind signatures he thought no one could detect. And the more I uncovered, the clearer a pattern emerged. He'd done this before. He targeted quiet employees, ones without strong backing, ones who wouldn't fight back, ones he could sacrifice to protect the real scheme. I wasn't his first, I was his latest, and I wasn't supposed to survive long enough to know. That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment, my laptop open, papers spread everywhere, my hands shaking not from fear anymore, but from a kind of clarity I'd never known before. If I went to HR, he'd win. If I went to the authorities, he'd erase me before they even looked into it. But there was something Elias didn't know. Quiet people don't break. Quiet people don't forget. Quiet people don't forgive. Quiet people plan. This was no longer about clearing my name. It was about rewriting the entire game slowly, patiently, surgically. I wasn't going to attack him. I was going to dismantle him, piece by piece, reputation by reputation, lie by lie, until the man who framed me became trapped inside his own trap, and he would never see it coming, because people like Elias always forget the shadow you ignore is the one standing right behind you. And so my revenge began, not with a scream, not with a threat, not with violence, but with a whisper, "I'm coming for you." I didn't know then how monstrous the journey would become, or how deep the rot inside the company truly went, or how many secrets I was going to uncover, secrets that would change not only my life, but the entire corporation. But I had already crossed the threshold. There was no going back, only forward, only deeper, only darker. The night I whispered, "I'm coming for you," something inside me shifted, quietly, almost gently, like a lock turning for the first time in years. I didn't sleep, couldn't. My mind was spinning, analyzing every detail, every possibility, every weapon I could use. Revenge wasn't a flame anymore. It was a blueprint, cold, strategic, a calm, calculated dismantling. I began with the smallest thing, disappearing, not literally. No, that would make him suspicious. I disappeared from the version of me he expected. No crying, no pleading, no desperate emails to HR, no shaky attempts to defend myself. I went silent because silence unsettles people like Elias. They expect chaos, they expect breakdowns, they expect fear. Silence gives nothing, and nothing is the most dangerous thing you can give a predator. The investigation dragged on. I was called in once. Brief questions, formal tone, no warmth. They had already made their decision before I walked through the door. I could see it in their eyes, but I kept my face blank, my hands folded neatly in my lap, my voice steady. Not because I wasn't terrified, but because I had to study them, who looked away, who hesitated before speaking, who already believed Elias. People reveal themselves in the smallest moments, and I was watching everyone. When I returned home that evening, I opened my laptop and began phase 1 of my infiltration, not into the company, but into Elias's real life. I found his social media, private accounts, locked accounts, a burner profile he thought was invisible. People forget I was a data analyst. People forget I worked with patterns. People forget I understood digital footprints better than anyone. He used a fake name for his private account, Evan Lewis, but his vanity betrayed him. He used the same style of captions, the same filter patterns, the same posting hours. Digital habits are like fingerprints. Through that, I found his network, friends, a gym group, a private investment club, an ex-girl, friend who still followed him out of habit, coworkers from previous companies, and one man whose name appeared too often, Victor Hale. A financier, a ghost in public records, a man with more money than transparency. The deeper I dug, the darker it became. Elias wasn't working alone. This wasn't a simple framing. This was a system, a structure of laundering, siphoning, burying money through digital channels, and sacrificing scapegoats when needed. I wasn't the first, I was the fifth, but I intended to be the last. To destroy Elias, I first had to understand him, his schedule, his patterns, his vulnerabilities, so I followed him, but digitally, every check-in location, every connection request, every late night login, every system ping coming from his devices. Slowly, a picture formed. He wasn't as smart as he pretended. He was careful, not brilliant, methodical, not genius. Men like him rely on confidence more than intelligence. His biggest weakness wasn't his crime. His biggest weakness was that he didn't believe anyone could outplay him, and that was the hole I would climb through. 2 weeks later, the company officially fired me. They sent an email, that was it, no apology, no humanity, just a cold message, "We wish you the best." I stared at the screen for a long moment, then I exhaled, not in defeat but in clarity. Now I was free. No surveillance, no HR reports, no formal ties. I was a ghost, and ghosts can go anywhere. The first time I saw Elias again was by accident, or what he thought was an accident. He was exiting a cafe downtown, laughing with someone on the phone, completely unaware of how closely I watched him from across the street. He looked normal, effortlessly handsome, harmless. Predators rarely look like predators. But I wasn't looking at his smile. I was looking at the tension in his jaw when the call ended, his fingers tapping his thigh, his eyes scanning the street, not for danger but for control. He liked knowing who was around him. He liked being the center of the environment. He liked being the smartest man in the room. It wasn't arrogance. It was insecurity, and insecure men are easier to break. I started phase 2, entering his world without him knowing. No hacking his accounts, too early, too obvious. I needed him to trust his environment, trust his routine, trust his power. That's what would make the fall devastating. So I targeted the people around him. Not directly, quietly, I joined his investment forum under a hidden profile and began observing. His posts were confident, but his strategies reckless. He made risky moves and made them look intentional. That meant something important. He was trying to impress someone, and it wasn't me. It was Victor Hale. Their conversations were subtle, code, like numbers that weren't stock numbers, times that weren't meeting times. Phrases that meant nothing on the surface, but everything underneath, and I learned something. There was going to be a transaction, a big one, a transfer large enough that another scapegoat would be needed. I knew without question he had already chosen her, a new girl, a junior analyst, quiet, shy, just like I used to be. Her name was Ivy Quinn, and I made a promise to myself. I would burn Elias long before Ivy ever reached the slaughter he was preparing. I needed access, real access, not from inside the company. No, from outside. People forget one thing about corporations. What destroys them never comes from inside. It comes from the parts they ignore. So I contacted someone from my past, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. My brother. We weren't close. Life separated us. But he owed me a favor, a big one. He worked in a field Elias feared, digital forensics. When he answered the phone, his voice was tired but steady. "Celine, are you okay?" "No," I said truthfully, "but I'm going to be." He listened without interrupting as I explained everything. Then he said the one sentence I needed: "Send me everything you have, all logs, all traces. I'll reconstruct the truth." I exhaled shakily for the first time in weeks. I wasn't alone. When the reconstruction came back, even I was shocked. Elias had been sloppy, not because he wasn't skilled, but because he was comfortable. He used similar encryption sequences, repeated certain keystroke patterns. His signature wasn't in the files, it was in the rhythm. Patterns don't lie, and now I had proof he couldn't erase. Not yet enough for the authorities, not enough for public exposure, not enough to destroy him, but enough to pull out the first brick of his foundation. So I made my first move, not against him, against perception. I created a new online identity, a woman named Nova Hale, close enough to ring familiarity, far enough to avoid suspicion. I joined their network. Quietly, slowly, cleverly, and it worked. Within days, Elias noticed me. Within a week, he trusted me. Within 2 weeks, he admired me, and he didn't know. He was admiring the woman who was building the cage he would soon be trapped inside. The night I truly stepped inside his world was at an exclusive networking event, one he regularly attended. I walked in with confidence I didn't truly feel, wearing a black dress I would never normally choose. Not revealing, just precise, sharp, clean, strategic. Something about me caught his attention instantly. He approached, smiling, friendly, charming, and I felt nothing, not fear, not anger, just calculation. "Have we met before?" he asked. I smiled softly. "Not yet." He laughed lightly, extending his hand. "I'm Elias, I know." He frowned slightly, but only for a moment, and then he relaxed again. Predators like being recognized. It feeds them. He didn't know he was shaking hands with the woman he had destroyed. He didn't know he was standing inches from the ghost he buried. He didn't know I could hear every lie beneath his polished voice. But I knew everything, every secret, every crime, every weakness, and as we talked, as he flirted, as he unknowingly stepped deeper into the trap, I realized something chilling. He genuinely had no idea what he had taken from me. Because men like him don't remember their victims, but their victims remember everything. The night after I met Elias at the networking event, I sat alone in my apartment with the city lights stretching endlessly through the window. It should have felt triumphant. Him shaking my hand without knowing the truth should have felt like power, but instead it felt heavy. Revenge isn't adrenaline, it isn't fire, it's gravity. Slow, patient, pulling everything into a single point until it collapses. And I was the collapse. I replayed our conversation over and over again, dissecting the micro expressions he thought he hid, the way he looked at me like I was an interesting puzzle, the way he leaned in slightly, unconsciously mocking me as someone he wanted to charm. He didn't recognize me, not even a hint of familiarity. I had been in his life for 2 years before he destroyed me, and now I was just another face in the crowd he wanted to manipulate. But that was the power I needed. I didn't want recognition, I wanted access. The following weeks were a study in precision. I built Nova Hale like an architect builds a cathedral, carefully, deliberately, stone by stone. I didn't push too close. I didn't flirt too obviously. I didn't challenge him too early. Men like Elias trust what they think they control. So I let him believe he was controlling me. I responded slowly to his messages. I let him invite me to exclusive forums. I let him see me as brilliant enough to admire, but naive enough to underestimate. Every compliment he gave me, I packed away like ammunition. Every detail he shared, I locked inside my mind. He thought he was pulling me in. He thought I was becoming part of his circle, but I wasn't entering his world. I was wrapping mine around him. The first crack in his armor showed during a dinner with Victor Hale. Yes, the same man whose name echoed through every illegal file I had uncovered. Victor wasn't charismatic like Elias. He was colder, sharper, older, a man who didn't fear consequences because he had never tasted them. When I entered the restaurant, invited, seemingly unexpected, Victor's eyes flicked over me once and dismissed me, but Elias stood up slightly, a gesture almost like pride. "This is Nova," he introduced. I smiled politely, and for the first time, I saw something shift in Victor's expression. Suspicion, not towards me, but towards Elias. Men like Victor don't like surprises. Men like Victor don't like new players they didn't authorize. And the moment Victor questioned Elias, I knew the fracture had begun. I watched them argue in low voices while pretending not to notice. Victor didn't trust easily, and Elias's desperation to impress him made him sloppy. Later that night, Elias messaged me, sorry if Victor seemed cold. He judges everyone. I typed back, he just doesn't know me yet, and that was enough. From that night onward, Elias began to confide in me, slowly, cautiously, but with growing dependence. He shared his frustrations, his ambitions, his insecurities, his subtle complaints about Victor, his resentment towards the company, and then he revealed the golden piece. I might take over his position one day. Victor trusts me more than anyone. I smiled to myself. Trust, that was the key inversion point, because soon Victor would trust no one, and Elias would finally see what betrayal feels like. To dismantle Elias, I needed 3 things. 1. Proof of his crimes. 2. Proof of his manipulation system. 3. A perfect moment to strike the proof I already had bits of. But bits weren't enough. I needed something undeniable, something that would burn not just his reputation, but his entire foundation. So I focused on Ivy Quinn, the girl he was lining up to be his next scapegoat. I studied her from afar, quiet, hard, working, always early, always nervous. The same kind of girl predators like Elias choose because they mistake kindness for weakness. I watched her slowly being groomed for the role I once had, the late night tasks, the confidential files, the special trust. I recognized every step because I had walked the same path, but this time I wasn't the one being led to the slaughter. I was the one guarding the exit, When Elias asked if I wanted to collaborate privately on something, I knew the trap was ready. He sent me encrypted files, massive ones he shouldn't have had access to. "What is all this?" I asked. His answer was casual. "Just opportunities, don't worry about it." But I worried. Oh, I worried in exactly the way he feared, because these files weren't just illegal. They were self-incriminating. Transfer orders, internal transaction maps, shadow ledgers, asset redirection, scrubbed employee logs, and at the center of it all, his digital fingerprint. My brother traced everything. "This is huge," he said on the phone. "This isn't just a corporate scandal. This is criminal infrastructure." I closed my eyes, good, because now I had the weapon. Phase 5 began with a single message sent from an anonymous system. "You framed the wrong girl." He didn't know it was me. Not yet, but I watched his panic ripple through his digital presence. Logins at strange hours, frantic forum deletions, encrypted backups, mass file wipes. He knew someone had him. He just didn't know it was the woman he had destroyed. The real strike happened the next night. Victor called an emergency meeting, private, top floor, high security, and I was there. Invited by Elias. He trusted me. He genuinely trusted me. It would have been tragic if it weren't so satisfying. Victor confronted him with printed documents. Documents I had fed through a trail that led directly back to Elias. Elias panicked, denied, raised his voice, sweated. The calm, charming predator was gone. And for the first time, I saw the real Elias, a terrified man who had never prepared for consequences. Victor's voice cracked like ice. "You brought a liability into this room. This girl, what is she to you?" Elias stuttered. "Nova, she's brilliant, she's useful. She understands," Victor interrupted sharply. "Or she's the one exposing you." His eyes finally turned to me. Even though he didn't know who I was, he felt something off. "Who are you?" he asked. I smiled softly, and I told the truth disguised as a lie. "Someone you underestimated." It hit Elias a second too late. His face went white. In that moment, I removed the mask. "I know everything," I whispered. "Every transfer, every frame job, every girl you destroyed, including me." Elias stumbled backward. He finally saw me. He remembered me. "Celine." His voice cracked into something pathetic. "Why, you're alive, you how, I told you." I said, "I'm coming for you." And then everything exploded. Victor screamed. Elias accused. Security surged in, but I had already set the final plan in motion. Every file was already sent to federal investigators. Every server connection traced. Every illegal system copied. Every message forwarded. And as they grabbed Elias, as he begged Victor to believe him, as he reached toward me like I was the only lifeline he had, I stepped back. "You took everything from me," I said quietly. "Now I'm taking everything from you." His final words before they dragged him out. "Please, don't leave me." But I already had, long ago. Elias was arrested. Victor was exposed. The entire illegal network collapsed within days. Ivy Quinn never suffered the fate he planned for her. Justice wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't cinematic. It was quiet. Methodical, slow, like gravity. I didn't get my old life back. No revenge ever restores what was lost. But I built a new one, stronger, sharper, untouchable. And in some strange, poetic way, Elias finally taught me something useful, how to survive in a world like his. Not by becoming a monster, but by becoming the storm monsters fear.